First, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here with me. I feel like this conversation is long overdue. I've always been interested in how your brain works. That day you walked into my first grade classroom, I think you were like 24 years old.
Mhm.
Like I've applied to open up my own school. And I was like, wow, that is badass. And I thought to myself, that was my dream for when I retire to open up my new school, my own school. But I just love how you were so young and so bold and unapologetic about it. And,
Mhm.
oh, thank you for sharing your presence with me today.
Of course. Likewise.
So let's introduce yourself in case someone's watching this and they don't know you.
Yeah. My name is Antoinette Kane, and I am an educator, founder of Little Water Preparatory Charter School, and just a human being.
With that.
Figuring it out.
All right. So questions I really want to know. So you
Mhm.
recently opened up a new school and then
Mhm.
walked away from it all. I am thoroughly intrigued. Can you walk us through the process of founding the school first from scratch?
Mhm. Yeah, well, when I was teaching at KIP with you, I was not I received an email. It was like February 20, I think it just turned 2020. And I was nominated for a fellowship that would allow me to, if I was selected, design my own school. So I was like, okay, this is intriguing. So I, of course, interviewed for it. And then while I was doing that, the pandemic literally began, like a month later in March. And so it was just such a weird space in education at the time. Like I remember us leaving our classrooms, like packing, like, oh, we get a week
Yeah,
off. And then it turned into like
forever.
many, and then having to like teach kids remotely and do affinity groups on Zoom. And it was just like, it was just a crazy time. And so, long story short, the first step to founding your school. So I did have the support of a fellowship. You don't need that to start a school. Really, anybody can start a school, but it does take a lot of will and skill. And so essentially that year would allow me to look and really think about what do I want the school design to be, because in every state it's different, but you essentially have to, and let me know if I'm answering your question or but yeah, you essentially have to write a charter application, which is pretty much synonymous like with writing a business plan as if you were about to start a business. And so that's really the first step is thinking about what your design is, what community you want it to exist in, what the model will be, and then beginning to write that application. So that was my very first step into founding a school.
You mentioned that you got nominated. How did you get nominated for something like that?
I actually don't know. So it's either a mixture of they have like a team of talent recruiters where they're like kind of like on LinkedIn, they're looking for educational folks who would, maybe align with this or they think have the competencies and qualities to do it. But mine was, someone nominated me. So I still don't know to this day who it
Wow.
was.
Hopefully find that person. So what was the vision for your school?
The vision, having been in most of my, well, all of my experience was in charter schools in New York City. The first being the infamous Success Academy, and then moving and transitioning to KIP. Um, I would say that I got really kind of opposing approaches to how we do this work in a charter environment. So that stood out to me. So my first goal was to think about what was really, really good about my charter experience as an educator in these. Like, what did they do really well? And then what was the areas that I felt they didn't do as well in? And so for me, I wanted to basically take the magic, if you will, that was happening in the classroom, in my classroom as a teacher, and kind of be in an environment where that was in every classroom in the hallway, right? Like there's so many times you walk into a school, it's like, that teacher is the good teacher. And I was like, no, it should be equitable. That should be in every space, in every room. And then most importantly, I wanted to make sure, especially during like COVID, we saw how much we rely on schools and how much just the history of schooling in our country has caused and implicated a lot of trauma generationally. So how can we like recreate a school and imagine it as a space for healing to happen? And I thought that by being the owner and like the driver behind the curriculum and the pedagogy, that would be the first step. And then thinking about how we train and develop our teachers, what we offer to the community, etc. So that was really my vision, in a nutshell, to create a space where generational healing and empowerment can happen.
From vision to reality, how closely did your vision align to the reality of the school that you created?
Oh, it was so I would say that, that vision is going to take time because I realize like that within it, you are still operating within the confines of the system. Like charter school model gives you certain levels of autonomy, but you're still like given the same fruits, if you will. You're not really changing the roots. You're just trying to change how the tree looks. And so I found out really early on that this was going to be a lot more challenging. And it doesn't just take one leader who has a vision for it. It would require me to develop and align myself with people who also equally had the hunger, the urgency, and the clarity of that vision. And I think that's the hardest part. And like within that, there's a lot of education that has to happen just in the community. We have a lot of like mindsets that we need to unlearn. And then getting adults to want to really shift the status quo and the way things have always been takes a lot of time and effort. And I think that yeah, that's where it kind of becomes a lot more challenging how to put it into practice.
I got you. My next question is how all right, so speaking of the challenges, right?
Mhm.
Can you walk us through like a moment that basically highlighted that challenge for you? Like maybe it was a Monday morning or something happened and you're like, this is an example of that challenge.
Oh, I have so many, but I'll think about the first one that came to my mind was just trying to open the school and get the facility. So I saw this like arc of going in really young, naive, right? Like having a lot of success in the classroom, but kind of almost underestimated. But I think that ambition was great that I had because it got me to open the school, right? But when you go in, you are thinking of the name. You're thinking about what education can do for children and children of color. Like you're in such a creative space. And then you're like, wait, I need to negotiate a lease for this facility, right? And you're looking through a 50-page lease. You're not understanding any of the lingo, but it's very clearly not on your side. It's very landlord heavy. And then the we were opening in August of 2022. I didn't get the keys in like August, maybe like 26th was our first day. I didn't get the keys to the building to probably like July 31st. And we're not talking like a turnkey building. We're talking like needed a complete hall, mass renovation. And so that was those moments, those challenges are so like just tedious and you have to go through this building department and this and there's so many facets to it. So yeah, it really like sucked the vision and creativity out of you. That was one of the biggest challenges, the facility.
I'm glad you highlighted that because I know there's some teacher somewhere right now who's like, I have a dream for this school that I want to create. But they're thinking more on the creative side and not thinking about the legal aspects and the commercial real estate that you need. So
Mhm.
thanks for highlighting that part. And then I want to zoom into the classroom now. What are some classroom teacher specific or student specific challenges that highlight the root issue
Whew.
in the education system?
I'll start with like the community and the students because that's where I started. I think that in my situation, it was unique because we were the first charter. Like you wouldn't see a charter if you go to New York City. The next one is in Albany, so we were kind of in that in between. So it took an incredible amount of education, marketing, like consistency to even get parents to trust sending their kid to a brand new school where there is no evidence of how it's going to do or what it's going to be, and they had to really rely on trust. So that relationship building and connecting with the community and that community engagement, it has to be grassroots and it has to be authentic. Um, Now with that shift is now also students coming in. We started with kindergarten in first, and we were coming out of the pandemic, but we were also in a district in which kindergarten is very much optional. And so students coming into first grade with a lot of basics, fundamentals that they didn't get in kindergarten, that was a big challenge in year one, too, is making sure that we were giving students what we needed, even if that meant having to like revise or curtail our curriculum. With teachers, when you are very much unapologetic about just thinking about equity and an anti-racist lens, not just in like oh, we're going to talk about like DEI on Thursday and this umbrella, but it's like woven into everything you do. and then being in the geographic environment that I'm in, where my talent pool was not like-minded teachers who were like, yes, I'm hungry to be in education and like break down systematic oppression. That was not it. And so that was such a challenge and continues to be a challenge of just finding the teachers to really align with the mission and vision, not just wanting to come to teach.
Yes, I feel that so much. All right, so you talked about having your first grade is not thoroughly being prepared. Do you think kindergarten should be mandatory?
Yeah, I do. I think that, but if we're going to make things mandatory, then I think that we need to also obviously increase the options of what that would look like. Right now in kindergarten, even in like my own business model, because of funding reasons, it's really hard to get around class sizes, like 30 in a class for 5-year-olds. Do I think that that is the best way? No. Do I think you can still teach 5-year-olds in a setting like that? Of course. But I think that, research and just working with students in the past few years have shown that like the needs have shifted a bit. And like understanding holistically what a student needs is in becoming increasingly more important. So I think that yes, if we're going to mandate it, then we need to also, of course, funnel in the resources to make sure it is equitable and meeting the needs.
All right. Why did you walk away from it all?
Oh, so from the beginning, I've always had like a by any means mentality, and I'm not a stranger to struggle. This was also something that I took the calling to do like in my mid 20s, very early in my career. Like I only taught 4 years. I say that, but like I did a lot in those 4 years, but I still say only 4 years, right? And so every year that I was doing it, because I was 5 years into it while the school was in year three, there was 2 years before that that really like solidified it. And then there was a point where it was very clear that I was meant, and I felt like I had this vision, and I got this vision from where I don't know, but I had this vision and I chose the right community, and I believe that. Um, but I felt very much like every day I had to show up as someone I'm not, because the work was becoming further and further and further. What I was asked to do was further and further away from why I even started in the first place. And so there was times where I would gaslight myself, like, no, you're just running this financial report, without having a director of operations, but it's in the service of kids, it's in the service of kids, in the service of kids. And then it was just such a disconnect. It was just such a disconnect. And I felt like I literally just trapped myself in another cycle of survival where it all started and ended with me. If something went right, it was me. If something went wrong, it was me. And I think that comes with leadership, but yeah, at what cost? And
Yeah.
I felt like the school was in a place where um we were making partnerships to make sure that it expanded. Um and so yeah, I just made that decision where I'm like, I don't think that the school necessarily needs to have me right
Mm,
now to continue to do what it's doing.
gotcha. And then you said that you were asked to do things that weren't aligned with your initial vision. Who was asking you? Like, who do you answer to?
Oh, that's a good question. So when you are, that's another thing, right? Like, and I always, that's my advice to people who, or educators who are like, I want to go build a school. You have to remember that you are putting in just as much sweat, blood, tears, commitment as any other CEO business owner, right? Because that's what it is, the business. However, you are not the owner of it. So you do all the work. I wrote the 571-page business plan. I also had to create a board because we're a nonprofit. Now, once that is state approved, you no longer have any rights of the school. You are just the founder, your name is on it, but the board operates and owns the school. I started off with a really, really strong board because I was able to like hand select them. And then things change. It's a voluntary role. They move on, things happen. And then there's kind of like breakdowns. And so that is kind of who you're answering to. But then you're also answering to whoever your state authorizer is. And they have a specific set of guidelines and requirements. New York and California being known to have some of the hardest, toughest
Ab-
authorizer.
Absolutely. Um, were parents were parents satisfied, or did they like the type of education, the way you ran things at school?
I would say overall, yes. I would say overall, yes. I had a lot of really deep personal relationships with the families and the community. And like I said, they were literally just trusting on the strength. They were bought into the mission, like them enrolling their most precious being, their student, into our school. Like that to me is just the ultimate form of just trust and on my end gratitude. I think that what happens is came in very much committed as a leader. I struggled a lot with teacher turnover.
Mhm.
Um, and that started to over time kind of just cause like certain breakdowns that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with. But yeah, I think overall, really good relationships.
Nice. I'm gonna come back to the teacher turnover part.
Yeah.
I want you to describe the exact moment when you realized that you needed to walk away. Like, were you in your car driving down the street? Were you in the shower scrubbing your knees? What were you doing? Where were you? How did it come about?
See, I wish I could answer that clearly, but I've always been in this situation, only further highlighted it, someone who stays too long, right? Like I will know already, but I will say no, 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 and I will stay, whether that's a relationship, a job, etc. And so for me, I feel like it happened somewhere in year two. Somewhere in year two. Year one, like I still like felt it and was doing it. And somewhere in year two, it just started to come. I would say probably around like March, April of year two. So like last year, 2024, March, April, literally around this time. And then I also, yeah, so the day that I actually submitted the resignation, I realized how much I was being triggered by certain one, the turnover. So there was like, yeah, we just this year, like we're really, really understaffed, really struggling with that. And I was always juggling lowering expectations and what we're doing for kids and making adults happy and stay, even if I knew they weren't the right adults. And that to me just didn't feel right. And yeah, just having to go through a cycle of like like being the one to break children's hearts and be like, your teacher's not coming back tomorrow. It just like it was just so triggering for me. And it got to a point where um I just couldn't I didn't want to deal with it. I also was in a lot of I won't go into detail, but I was in like a lot of like very like weird and unsafe situations throughout this founding journey. Just like in the community and like yeah, if you want to know more I can tell you, but like there was just like a lot of moments that just confirmed like
The
what's
same.
on the other.
Yeah. Where did you get this type of self awareness from? Because you're like the person who stays too long. How did you come about? How did you find that trend in yourself?
I think that it probably came that's a good question. I don't really know, but I think I've always been very self-aware and I think it just came unfortunately from being a child who had to be because I didn't necessarily have adults or parents who would do that for me. You know, it's like when you're like riding the bike and you fall, it's like, you know someone's going to come and give you a band-aid. Where it's like you just have to be self-aware of like what am I going to do to repair myself in this moment. So I think it definitely like came from childhood and then I think it just you have to want to I think the most important thing to study is yourself and no matter what you're doing.
Love that. All right. So back to the teachers. Okay. You talked about lowering expectations. So basically teachers could be happy versus keeping expectations high so that children can be prepared for life,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
To an educator who's just starting out, they might be in a position they're in a school and it's too hard for them and they want to quit.
mhm,
So to a new teacher, what would you say to that new teacher to get them prepared for the moment when they're like, I've had enough.
mhm.
This is not for me. What would you say to a brand new teacher?
Yeah, I think that before you even commit to going into education, what I've realized with new teachers, for some of them, their first year of teaching is quite literally the hardest thing they've ever been through, right? Like it is very challenging. And so when you stick it out in that process, what you're really learning is a new level of self awareness of actually how do I navigate challenges? How do I adapt when there is ever growing change? You know, all the like cliche interview questions that you'll answer. Like when you're in teaching, especially in your first year, you are thrown into it and you have to really go through the motion. So in your first year, my advice would be to never quit. But and to continue going through because whether or not you return for a second year of teaching or not, you seeing it through is going to further allow you to get a lens into yourself that you can apply to the next job, the next role. So yeah, and like you just need to give yourself time because the first year of teaching is always hard. And then I think also going in with, it's easy to say without an ego, but really it's just the mindset of whatever I'm doing, how can I can ensure that tomorrow I'm coming in at being at least 1% better for students.
I love that. So I get this question every year from teachers, and it's, I don't know if I'm meant to do this. I don't know if I'm cut out for this.
Mhm.
How can you tell if you're cut out for something?
Yeah. Well, one, it's not going to other people to ask. I would say you really need to sit with yourself. Only you know that, if you're cut out for it or not. And I think that the most important thing that newer teachers struggle with is confidence. And I like thinking about confidence as the one who does and tries, not the one who's the best at it. And so I think that if you just like shift your perspective to that and like, am I showing up every day trying? Then you will over time find yourself being confident. And maybe even in like May of your first year teaching, you find yourself like giving the new hire like some advice, right? Because you remember what it was like. So yeah, my advice, don't go to no one else. You know. Um, that's important.
Okay. As a school leader, for the teacher who is trying their best and is just not reaching that bar, what's the next step?
For me, I really listen to a lot of Elena Aguilar, and she talks a lot about like the three B's, like what's the way of being, which I can't really change in a person. What do they believe about themselves or the work or whatever? And then how does that manifest in behaviors? So I always try to go and understand the beliefs, like what's the mindset behind it, and then what behaviors are coming up. I would say that in my leadership, I went the route because I worked in environments where it was like, you're out, like if you're not meeting the certain things. I didn't go with that approach. I kind of regret that in a way because I see how it doesn't go. So for me, the first is like, do you have a willingness and a hunger? It's different to say like, ugh, if I start hearing rhetoric where it places the blame back onto the students or the community, that already is a conversation not about what you're doing, but what you believe you're doing, and what you're doing it for. So yeah, I don't know if I answer your question, but I try to think of it like that. And then if it's like a belief issue, we have to be clear and direct on that. If it's like I'm really, really trying and I just don't have the teacher toolkit that I need, 100% you need to guide and support them just like you would a struggling student in your classroom.
Thanks. Would you open another school?
No. Would I open another school under our current umbrella of a system? No. Would I work for our school under our current umbrella of a system? Yes. If I felt like I was able to have direct impact in my role, right? Like even as a teacher, I didn't agree with the system, but every day I walked into my classroom, I saw the impact. It didn't matter. I shut my door, and
Yeah,
it was like this abstract body. Whereas being the founder, you couldn't close your door to it. You were the door, and so that was too much for me. Would I open and think about like a micro school or, something like completely like just in a new imaginary space? Yes. And I think right now is the time to start thinking about those things.
I agree. So outside of education, what does the future look like for Miss Kane? The next 5 to 10 years, what does that look like for you?
Wish I had a crystal ball because I don't know. Because I've been the girl with like a 5-year plan, but nothing went according to my 5-year plan. I was supposed to be in education for 1 year, and then look what happened. I know that no matter what I do, I'm always going to do a form of teaching. Whether it's like school academic or it's just another, maybe it's like how to become self-aware or whatever it is. But right now I'm really just going with the motions and kind of looking for signs of what the next path would be, and for the first time just trusting my intuition.
Is that uncomfortable for you to just trust your intuition versus having a detailed
Very,
plan?
very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go. There's a lot of reasons why it's uncomfortable, but yes, it's very uncomfortable, especially as someone who grew up without money, right? And then when I was 13, got my working papers, was working at McDonald's. I have never, and I'm 30, I have never not had a job like since I was 13. This is my first time like being like, when does my paycheck? I don't have a paycheck coming actually. I don't have health insurance anymore, like all of these things. But then again, that just reminded me and affirmed like now was the time to walk away because the school exists and it is still serving children. Like I did it, like I did that part, but leaving and having put in that much work and just so much knowledge and intellectual, like just property that you put into it, you leave with none of it. You leave with nothing, no benefits, no rights, no money, no nothing. So it's just like, just, being aware of that.
Did did you already hire a replacement or the board taking care of that?
So I actually had a principal in residence this year who I was training to become the principal, whether it was this spring or next year. And so that I was just able to help her transition. We also are in our renewal process. So, because of charter has like 5 years. And then right now we're in year three. So you apply for the renewal. And I just knew that we didn't have the resources that we needed to be able to successfully like renew and or expand to maybe like a K-8 model or whatever. So I was able to partner with a current charter school, which I can't give the name yet, that's not public knowledge, but they are essentially going to be like taking over. Their board is my board's going to dissolve, they're going to merge, so we're going to become part of like a charter network. Well, Little Water Prep is. And again, that partnership coming at the brink of me leaving was just another sign, because I like did pray and I did ask God, like, I want to I want to move on. I need to see what's next. I'm like, I was in a dark. I didn't see anything else after Little Water Prep. I felt like this, like I couldn't see life after it. It was just very daunting. But anyways, then seeing this merger, because I kept asking God, make it in a way where like the school can continue to serve children and evolve in its mission, but it's not. If I die tomorrow, it doesn't exist. And then like the merger came and this partnership, and so I'm just like, wow. So I am confident that Little Water Prep is going to continue and going to exist.
Does it keep its name?
Yes, it does. They love
Awesome.
the
Right. So one
and
of
that
the
was
principles. Wait, go
yeah.
ahead. What did you say?
No, that was just like a part of the negotiation. Like there's no parts of the change. So I knew I felt really aligned with that executive director and that school's mission and approach. So worked out.
Wonderful. I'm glad it did. For children. I'm glad it worked out for children. So, Miss Kane, one of the principles of life that I aim to live by is to be the type of person who can do the type of things that will get me what I want out of life.
Hmm.
Be, do, get. And it's something that Myron Golden speaks about. And if
Hmm.
you guys don't know Myron Golden, look him up on YouTube. So, but he speaks about be, do, have, and I tweaked it a little bit for myself is be, do, get. So, for example, if I want to be a fit and hot grandma when I'm 60, that's one of my goals.
And you attacked it.
Yeah. So what I did is I became the type of person who likes to eat simple, unprocessed, low sugary foods. That's the do, right? That way I don't have to fight with myself to lose weight when I'm older.
Right.
So I became the type of person who will do the thing, which is eating cleaner, so that I can get the result that I want, which is to be a hot and fit grandma.
Yeah.
Okay. So for you, who are you becoming next? What are you going to do to become her? And what do you think you'll get as the result of becoming her?
Yeah. That's a great one. Oof. I would say to answer that on the fly, I love that formula. You need to coin that because it's just something that it would help a lot of people. Like breaking it down. So thank you for that. But I would say be the person that I want to be right now is not, less tangible. It's more so the person who gets like achieves what they want without the mindset that they need to work the hardest. And I know that sounds like the anti, but I like sit back and I look at like people who come from a bit more privileged backgrounds or who just had different access, and they literally have like a certain mentality around ease, right? Like I don't need to be chasing something or running after something. It's going to attract me. And I think like to be that person, you need to like do those things. And like me just leaving my job and not having a plan B, which to some is crazy, I think that like in a way that was me doing that, because I'm saying like I'm walking away from the environments and the roles that require me to be the hardest working person in the room, that require me to lose time with myself. And then what I'm going to get from that, I believe, is a nice balance, which I never had, between, yes, being successful, but also allowing to be rested in your success.
I love that. Would you, as of today, is Antoinette Kane still the person who stays too long?
I would say no. I would say no. Um, Yeah, I would say no. And even as daunting as it is, I feel lighter. And again, I went from feeling like I'm just running into the same brick wall or down the same dark tunnel with no end to like, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. And then, you just get back into a space of imagination and creation. And I'm someone who has a lot of creativity, but I also am someone who believes in logic. I believe in strategy. I believe in ABCD, having a plan for what doesn't happen. And so I've already saw what life can bring me and get me when I lean into that strategic, logical self. Now I want to see where is life going to take me and what am I going to get when I lean into my more intuitive, creative self.
Love you. Well, that concludes my questions. Do you have
Yeah.
any last words of wisdom for us or any questions?
Mm, no, I don't think I have any questions. I think that, the word of wisdom is just like it sounds like so cliche, and I think I said it earlier, but it's like never like you are your biggest investment,
Yeah,
right? And so like I loved your example of like be do get even if you want to be the best mom you can be, like before that, there has to be something that you're doing so that you're in a position to be the best mom that you want to be. Um yeah, and then I just think that never stay too long, you know? When you know. Trust your gut. There's so many times I gaslit myself into staying in the role where it was just no.
trust your gut. Don't stay too long.
Yeah, trust your gut. Don't take too long. Even if it's something that you created and built, right? You can say, wow, like 25-year-old me created this vision. I see where it is in the next 5 years. And I want to try something else.
Yeah. All right. So where can people find you if people want to reach out to you and just present to you something new, something creative that matches your new
Mhm.
who have you've now become? How can they reach
You
you?
can find me on LinkedIn first and foremost, Antoinette Kane, Kane. They could also find I am in the process of like rebranding and restarting my consultancy, but more so my niche is going to be curriculum, and that is by any means learning. So by any means learning on Instagram or by any means consulting.com. Yeah.
Love that. I love that you kept the brand because when I first saw your classroom, that third grade classroom, you had that by any means necessary in big and bold on the back wall. It was the first thing
Always.
you came in.
And I just want to end with saying that, right? Like when I got this, when I was designing the school, I was not allowed to name it by any means. It was too radical, and there was something in it that like just hurt my soul. And that's where I'm going back to. Like whatever I do next, it's not answering to any system or whatever. It's going to be completely me. Like if I want to radicalize education, we're going to radicalize it. If I want to call something by any means, we're going to call it by any means. And so that's just the space that I'm in right now.
Love that. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me your time.
Yeah, of course.
We'll talk offline.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Have a great day. Bye.